is Eyewitness News, the news leader, with Bill Ritter and Liz Cho, Scott Clark with sports, and Lee Goldberg with the exclusive AccuWeather forecast. Now, Eyewitness News at 11.
They say get back! We say fight back!
There is frustration tonight in some parts of New York over the dramatic verdict in the Sean Bell shooting trial.
This was a travesty of justice.
But for the 3 New York cops cleared of all charges in that deadly 50-bullet barrage, there is relief, and from one, even an apology.
This started my life back.
Still, this controversy is far from over. Tonight, Reverend Al Sharpton says he's going to lead a campaign of civil disobedience to protest the verdict.
And good evening, everyone. 11 o'clock. I'm Bill Ritter.
And I'm Liz Cho. And tonight there are calls for a citywide protest and boycotts because of the verdict. As for the detectives, they are not legally off the hook yet. We have several reporters on this story tonight. We begin with the verdicts. And Eyewitness News reporter NJ Burkett. He is at the courthouse in Kew Gardens, Queens. NJ.
Liz, careless but not criminal. That is how the judge explained his decision today to throw out every count in the indictment. Every bullet, he said, was justified, from the first shot to the 50th shot. The victim's fiancé was inconsolable. The verdict was just as stunning as the shooting itself. The unfortunate consequences of their conduct were tragic, said Justice Arthur Cooperman, but the police response was not proved to be criminal. After 17 months, it was over. Detective Michael Oliver, stoic from the beginning, began to cry.
I, as a layman, thought that there were too many shots fired, and I don't know whether, if I were a police officer, what I would have done. It's easy to second guess.
Reverend Al Sharpton abruptly canceled his scheduled news conference and led a peaceful protest march down Queens Boulevard with Sean Bell's family and the 2 surviving victims. Prosecutors said Sean Bell died needlessly at the hands of reckless New York City detectives. But the defense strategy was to discredit the civilian eyewitnesses one by one, to portray the surviving victims as lying opportunists, and the detectives as the only honorable, reliable witnesses. That apparently worked. These factors, said the judge, played a significant part and had the effect of eviscerating the credibility of those prosecution witnesses. End quote. The DA strongly disagreed, his lead prosecutor insisting their witnesses were unfairly discounted by the judge.
You know something? Justice is supposed to be for everybody, and that includes people who may have had felony convictions or arrests, and it includes police officers as well.
Queens prosecutors have already offered to cooperate with the U.S. Justice Department in a federal civil rights investigation, if it comes to that. Live tonight, Kew Gardens, Queens, NJ Burkett, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
NJ, thank you. As for Bell's family, the bitterness over the trial's outcome will most likely not fade away anytime soon. Hundreds of people spent the day outside the courthouse in Kew Gardens today, many supporting the family, some so overcome by emotion they collapsed in the street. Tonight, Bell's parents are vowing that the end of the trial does not mean the end of the case. We continue our coverage with Tim Fleischer. He's at One Police Plaza. Tim.
And reacting to this verdict, the 3 detectives, in fact, they were making their first comments ever in this case, one of them quite emotional, and as you might expect, Sean Bell's family extremely disappointed.
A slap in the face and a kick in the ass. That's what I felt. I felt like, yeah, that life didn't worth mean nothing to them.
Angry, extremely upset, William Bell's emotions pouring out as friends come to comfort this family again. He's disappointed that 3 police detectives who pumped 50 shots into his son's car, killing him and wounding 2 others, found not guilty.
I have no feelings for them whatsoever right now. I have no feelings for them.
This verdict, though, also striking an emotional chord with Detective Mark Cooper. His words, for the first time, coming hard.
I'd like to say sorry to the Bell family for the tragedy.
The other detectives acquitted. Giscard Isnora.
I'd like to thank Lord Jesus Christ for bringing this role to fruition.
Detective Michael Oliver.
And for Judge Cooperman for making a fair and just decision.
The Detectives Endowment Association, which was highly critical of the case from the start, finding relief in this verdict.
How do I spell relief? N-O-T-G-U-I-L-T-Y. Not guilty.
This verdict brings, though, for the Bell family, as they gather around Sean's grave to pray, an upsetting end to their tragedy.
Yes, of course I'm angry. Wouldn't you be?
Many deeply felt by this case. In fact, one person observed today that there was a verdict today, but we certainly have not heard the last of this case. Reporting live in Lower Manhattan, Tim Fleischer, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
And indeed, Tim, we have not heard the last of the case. The trial may be over, but the potential legal problems for these three cops are not over. The U.S. Justice Department says it's going to conduct a thorough review of the case for possible civil rights violations. And the officers are already facing civil lawsuits filed by the families of the men who were shot. Those cases could go to trial, or they could be settled out of court. And finally, the NYPD may yet impose administrative charges against the officers, and that could lead to their dismissals.
Tonight, community leaders are promising vocal but peaceful protests this weekend in Queens. Reaction to the verdict was swift, and tonight there are calls for civil disobedience. Eyewitness News reporter Carolina Lead in the Cambria Heights section of Queens with much more on this. Carolina.
Liz, the key message tonight at that meeting: do something, but do it the right way. Community leaders say show strength in numbers, not in violence.
For me to say you shouldn't be frustrated or you should just try to sit still and accept it, that's not right, it's not fair, it's not real. But with that same frustration, we have to use some of that frustration to make some changes.
Those words repeated by lawmakers and Queens community leaders at an emergency meeting tonight. More than a dozen leaders gathered for nearly 3 hours reacting to the Sean Bell verdict, a verdict those inside Brewer Democratic Club in St. Albans couldn't believe.
I really couldn't believe what my ears were hearing.
I was in the courthouse. There was a stunned, incredible silence.
Community leaders suggest turning that silence into action, uniting, lobbying, and changing laws.
Us as a community have to come together and continue to lobby until it happens. If it doesn't happen in a week, if it doesn't happen in a month, if it doesn't happen in a year, we got to do it time and time again.
I don't think violence is the answer.
Neighbors stressed rioting and violence are not the answer, and leaders echoed that cry.
I will not participate in anything like that, and I don't want anyone to. We have come too far to do that.
We need to do something to ensure that they also know that we're just not going to sit and roll over on these issues.
Neighbors and leaders are also asking for a trial task force as well as a special prosecutor to look over future cases along these lines. They're also asking for new regulations that do not allow police officers to drink even while undercover. Reporting live in Cambria Heights, I'm Carolina Lead, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.